It is 4:47 a.m. aboard the International Space Station. Commander William Shepard checks the environmental readings and freezes. Temperature controls are offline. Humidity systems are failing. The life support diagnostics show critical errors 250 miles above the Earth. Down in mission control, engineers scramble to find a mechanical fault that doesn't exist. The systems keeping 3 human beings alive in the vacuum of space are failing because a remote user is currently downloading $1.7 million worth of NASA's most classified proprietary software. Jonathan James is sitting in a cluttered bedroom in Pinecrest, Florida. He is 15 years old. He isn't working for a foreign intelligence agency or a terrorist cell. He is a bored teenager with an internet connection who decided to see how far a single login could take him. Jonathan viewed these late-night explorations as a self-taught masterclass in network architecture. The American justice system would eventually categorize him as one of the most dangerous cybercriminals in history. 8 years later, under the weight of federal accusations for a massive corporate data breach he did not commit, Jonathan would take his own life. His story reveals the fragility of modern defense. Jonathan demonstrated that the physical safety of the most powerful military on Earth can be compromised by a single mind that refuses to recognize digital boundaries. Jonathan's obsession began in 1989. At 6 years old, he watched his father, Robert, debugging code at the kitchen table. Robert explained that programming was the art of making machines obey. For Jonathan, those green lines of text were commands that gave him total control over the environment. By the time he reached elementary school, Jonathan had claimed the family computer as his own. His father installed parental controls to limit screen time, creating the first digital wall Jonathan would navigate. Jonathan found a bypass in a single afternoon. He saw it not as disobedience, but as a technical challenge. He had successfully mapped the logic of the software and found a way to route his activity around the restriction. By age 10, Jonathan was studying Unix documentation and C programming manuals, technical materials typically reserved for university-level computer science students. He spent his nights analyzing network protocols, learning how data moved between servers across the globe. At 12, the conflict at home peaked when Jonathan unilaterally wiped the family's Windows operating system to install Linux, citing its superior security and fewer vulnerabilities. When his parents confiscated his hardware in an attempt to force him outside, he ran away from home until they agreed to return it. Standard discipline failed because his parents were treating him like a rebellious teenager. They didn't realize they were trying to ground a digital savant who had already outpaced the security knowledge of the average IT professional. By 1999, Jonathan was operating under the handle Comrade. He found no interest in stealing credit cards or personal data for profit. In the underground hacker scene, status was built on technical complexity. To earn respect, he needed to penetrate networks that were designed to be impenetrable. He perfected the technique of lateral movement. He would identify a minor vulnerability in an external server, use it to gain a low-level login, and then move horizontally through the internal network until he secured administrative privileges. His curriculum of successful breaches grew to include the Miami-Dade school system and the corporate infrastructure of Bell South. He treated these multi-billion-dollar networks like digital parks, wandering through their most secure directories at will. Jonathan's methodology was unique. After gaining full control, he would often message the system administrators to explain exactly how he got in. He provided the specific patches and configurations needed to close the holes he had used. To Jonathan, he was providing a free security audit. He was a tourist helping the locals fix their locks, unaware that the legal system viewed his helpful intrusions as federal crimes. Corporate targets were no longer providing the technical resistance Jonathan craved. He turned his attention toward the .mil domain, the digital territory of the United States military. These servers were protected by multi-layered encryption and monitoring systems that most hackers wouldn't even attempt to scan. In August 1999, he identified a server with a generic IP address that lacked the obvious branding of a high-value target. It was a subtle opening in a much larger defensive web. On August 23rd, Jonathan began probing the server's ports. He identified a specific vulnerability in the remote access software that allowed him to intercept unencrypted login credentials from legitimate users. At 11:47 p.m., he used those captured credentials to bypass the primary authentication gate. He achieved root access, giving him the same level of authority as the system's actual administrators. As the internal directories loaded, Jonathan saw the file headers for the Defense Threat Reduction Agency. He realized he was no longer looking at a generic government server. He was inside the United States Pentagon. A 15-year-old had bypassed the security of the Department of Defense from a suburban bedroom. He had proven that the most advanced military hardware in history. If you want to protect the Defense Threat Reduction Agency, you start with the physical world. Armed guards, biometric scanners, and layers of concrete surrounding servers in Dallas, Virginia, sitting safely inside the military's most formidable structures. Those barriers excel at stopping a conventional intruder. They offer zero protection against lazy password policies and unpatched software. Down in Pinecrest, Florida, a teenager named Jonathan James capitalized on that exact blind spot. Operating from his bedroom, he bypassed the fortress entirely by systematically identifying the specific software vulnerabilities that physical guards were never meant to stop. Through reconnaissance and vulnerability scanning, he identified a weak entry point, installing a digital backdoor to return whenever he wanted. Over 3 weeks, he wandered completely undetected, intercepting 3,000 messages, downloading passwords for 19 military computers, and accessing 10 distinct defense systems. He orchestrated this massive intelligence breach from a desk covered in Star Trek memorabilia and empty pizza boxes. The concrete and armed guards of Virginia were effectively useless. A fortress fails the moment a network backdoor is left unguarded. While Pentagon access satisfies most hackers, Jonathan's true target was NASA. On July 15, 1999, flight directors at NASA's Mission Control in Houston were reviewing critical operations. Displays showed normal temperature and humidity readings. 240 miles above the Earth, Commander William Shepard relied entirely on NASA's software for life support and environmental controls on the International Space Station. Keeping the crew breathing required complex, proprietary code. That same night, Jonathan slipped past NASA's security protocols and quietly downloaded $1.7 million worth of that exact classified source code. He had no interest in espionage. He was a curious teenager who thought the code looked interesting and wanted a free programming education. When NASA engineers detected the intrusion, they panicked. Fearing a compromise of the space station's life support systems, they initiated a total shutdown, essentially pulling the plug on their own network. The servers stayed dark for 3 weeks. NASA spent $41,000 just paying teams to audit every single line of the compromised code. Meanwhile, Jonathan was reviewing atmospheric recycling algorithms on his monitor when his mother yelled up the stairs that dinner was ready. He simply bookmarked the page and went down to pass the salt. NASA's multi-million-dollar infrastructure was effectively held hostage by a teenager with a dial-up connection. A single person, acting without malice, managed to ground a federal space agency while treating their secure network like a personal study guide. On January 26, 2000, the physical world finally caught up to the digital one. A massive federal task force of Defense Department investigators, local police, and FBI cybercrime specialists in bulletproof vests swarmed a quiet Florida suburb. Their target was a sleepy teenager standing at his front door in his pajamas. The agents tore through his bedroom. They seized 5 computers, a basic Palm Pilot, and even a Star Trek technical manual, entirely confusing science fiction with hacking evidence. The investigators walked into the interrogation room, bracing for a hardened criminal. Instead, Jonathan confessed immediately. He asked for no lawyer, offered no denials, and made no attempt to minimize what he had done. He treated the federal investigation like a technical debriefing. He enthusiastically explained exactly how he bypassed their systems, where he installed the backdoors, and what they needed to do to fix their own security flaws. The government, however, was not looking for a consultant. On September 21, 2000, 16-year-old Jonathan James became the first juvenile in United States history to be sentenced for cybercrime. Jonathan James demonstrated that the Pentagon's walls ended where its network began. He showed that a household internet connection could reach past armed guards and biometric scanners, bringing the full weight of the federal government directly to a suburban front door. When the federal government caught a 15-year-old inside their most secure networks, they didn't look for a path to rehabilitation. Attorney General Janet Reno issued public statements about getting tough on juvenile cyber offenders, sending a clear message: hack the government, and you will face adult consequences. Jonathan was sentenced to 7 months of house arrest and probation until 18. Along with formal apology letters to NASA and the Department of Defense, he was banned from using a computer for any recreational reason. For a kid whose entire identity was built around networking and programming, this order severed him from the only world where he felt competent. 6 months into that probation, Jonathan tested positive for marijuana. This single violation triggered an immediate response. Federal marshals arrived with handcuffs and transport orders. This minor, non-violent mistake ended his digital restriction and replaced it with physical incarceration. Jonathan was no longer a child being monitored at home. He was a prisoner headed for a federal juvenile detention facility in Alabama. In Alabama, Jonathan entered a world defined by violent inmates and gang hierarchies. The quiet kid who communicated better with computers than people now lived in an environment where physical strength and social manipulation determined his status. He served 6 months behind bars. When he emerged, his family found him changed. The boy who once explained complex Linux installations with infectious enthusiasm had become withdrawn and suspicious. His father later described him as being strangely idle, as if the energy he once had for digital exploration had been extinguished. By 2008, Jonathan was 24 years old, living in the same house where his hacking career began. He had no degree and no steady employment. After his mother died of breast cancer 2 years earlier, he spent his time isolated in his childhood bedroom, surrounded by memories and prescription bottles. Jonathan had actually kept his promise to the justice system. He had abandoned unauthorized access and digital adventures entirely, trading his reputation as comrade for the anonymous existence of a depressed young adult. The federal government's intervention had successfully removed the threat of a juvenile hacker. However, it replaced that curious teenager with a man who had lost his connection to the outside world. While Jonathan remained isolated, the TJX company's headquarters in Massachusetts held an emergency board meeting. CEO Carol Meyerowitz announced the largest data breach in corporate history, with over 45 million customer records compromised. The FBI's cybercrime division in Washington mobilized immediately. Agents began pinning photos to a caseboard, identifying a sophisticated web of hackers, including Albert Gonzalez and Christopher Scott. This was an organized, professional conspiracy that had been executing cyber heists for 3 years. Agents pored over digital forensics, following money trails and coded messages hidden in encrypted storage. This criminal syndicate was a mature enterprise, using complex methods to steal credit card numbers from major retailers across the country. Deep inside a seized hard drive, investigators found a cache of encrypted communications. When these were decoded into readable logs, they discovered references to a trusted associate called JJ. The logs indicated that JJ handled the logistics for an OfficeMax job and opened a mail drop in Staten Island. The crew noted that JJ was familiar with old-school hacking methods, making him a valued part of the conspiracy. FBI agents ran a correlation search to identify the user behind the alias. They filtered their database for individuals with a hacking background who lived in geographic proximity to the other known associates. The search results highlighted a name that had been in the FBI's files since the late 90s, Jonathan Joseph James. To the agents, the connection seemed obvious. A shared set of initials and a prior record for high-level hacking redirected the largest cyber investigation in history. The FBI was no longer looking for a new suspect. They were looking at Jonathan. The FBI began with Jonathan's existing record of breaching top-tier government systems. At 15, he had already proven he could bypass security at NASA, a feat that anchored the agents' perception of his current capabilities. The timeline agents constructed seemed to support their theory. As shown here, Jonathan's period of isolation after prison perfectly overlapped with the rise of the Gonzalez crew's most significant hacks. Investigators interpreted his unemployment and his mother's medical bills as a financial motive. In the eyes of the FBI, Jonathan wasn't a depressed man mourning a loss. He was a smart player who had gone underground to wait for the right opportunity to join a bigger crew. This is the danger of confirmation bias. Every detail of Jonathan's struggle, from his lack of a job to his isolation, was viewed as evidence of a calculated criminal career, rather than the reality of a broken life. While agents in Virginia were finalizing their case, Jonathan was at home playing video games and eating cereal for dinner. He had no idea that federal law enforcement was preparing to hold him responsible for a $45 million record heist. The FBI's profile described a sophisticated, active member of a global syndicate. The visual reality in that house in Pinecrest was a young man whose hacking days were nearly a decade behind him. On paper, the agents had checked every box: the matching initials, the elite skills, the proximity to known criminals, and a clear financial need. The massive federal justice system had built a comprehensive case against a young man who wasn't even involved, demonstrating how easily a set of coincidences can be used to construct a version of reality that ignores the truth. May 7, 2008, 6:42 a.m. in Pinecrest, Florida. A federal task force descends on a quiet suburban home, bathing the front lawn in the frantic, flashing shadows of police lights. Secret Service agents lock down the perimeter with absolute precision. For the shocked neighbors, and for the young man inside, it is an exact replay of a raid that happened 8 years earlier. Jonathan James maintained his innocence throughout the search, certain that he had no connection to the crimes they were investigating. The agents searched for any link to the TJX hacking conspiracy, examining his computer equipment, financial records, and communications. They found a legally owned handgun and notes indicating severe depression, but they found no digital evidence connecting him to the hack. Despite this total vacuum of evidence, the federal investigation continued to move forward. The government was hunting the perpetrators of the TJX data theft. At the time, this breach of corporate servers was the largest data theft in American history, generating massive pressure from both the public and major retail corporations. Media attention was relentless. Federal prosecutors faced immense pressure to secure a high-profile conviction to show the public they were in control. Jonathan's past made him a convenient target. He was already famous as the teenager who had hacked into NASA and the Pentagon. To the prosecution, this history made him a juicier target than the actual suspects. With the media and the public demanding a culprit, the investigation remained focused on the most recognizable name available. Jonathan began to see his situation through the lens of Agent Steele's Guide to Getting Busted. This was a survival manual written by a hacker who had navigated federal prosecution. The guide characterizes the criminal justice system as a game with its own specific rules of engagement. The manual warns that law enforcement will use psychological pressure and strategic deception to force a result. It also details the mechanics of plea bargains. In practice, the system provides rewards for those who cooperate with the prosecution's established narrative. Applying these rules to his own case, Jonathan concluded that the system required a conviction to function, and his history made him the ideal candidate. The TJX hack was actually the work of a sophisticated international ring. They had successfully stolen data from over 180 million credit and debit cards. The mastermind behind the ring was Albert Gonzalez. At the time of the theft, Gonzalez was simultaneously working as a paid informant for the United States Secret Service. This chart maps the actual network. Gonzalez was the central node, supported by Christopher Scott on the ground and Stephen Watt. Watt was the technical expert who wrote the custom software for the theft. He also used the alias Jim Jones, or JJ. Investigators were aware of the JJ initials found in the evidence. However, they continued to try and pin the JJ alias on Jonathan James instead of Stephen Watt. Jonathan realized that while the most dangerous hackers would likely receive plea deals for their cooperation, he would face the full weight of the prosecution because of his reputation. While the real masterminds operated under the protection of informant status, the investigation continued to close in on an innocent man. Late in the evening on May 18, 2008, Jonathan sat at his desk, just 25 feet from where his story originally began. He wrote final letters to his family and friends, expressing a total lack of faith in the justice system. Jonathan explained that serving years in prison for a crime he didn't commit was unacceptable. He viewed this as his only way to regain control of a situation he could no longer influence. At 11:47 p.m., the young man who had once breached the Pentagon's networks took his own life. He was 24 years old. He had never been charged or tried in the TJX case. He died from the fear of being railroaded by a process that he believed had already decided his guilt. On March 25, 2010, The actual TJX conspirators were sentenced inside the Boston federal courthouse. Albert Gonzalez was sentenced to 20 years. Christopher Scott received 7 years, and Stephen Watt, the technical lead, received 2 years. The conclusion of the multi-year investigation confirmed that Jonathan James had no involvement in the TJX case. Jonathan was a brilliant mind who had previously helped administrators identify and fix vulnerabilities. His death meant the loss of someone who could have helped secure the very systems he once penetrated. The Jonathan James file is closed. His story remains a permanent record of a prosecution that prioritized a high-profile win, regardless of the facts.